From the plains to every town, we're building futures, breaking ground. Teachers rising, voices strong, leading change where we belong. It's about the hearts we raise, lighting up the brighter days. Kansas leads, we stand together, stronger now than ever, ever. Learning, growing, planting seeds, shaping tomorrow. Kansas leads.
Hey everyone, welcome to Leeds Lounge. We do these every single month. We are still sponsored by no one. If one of our listeners wants to step up, maybe pay for a Zoom subscription and we don't have to get timed out anymore. Who knows? We are excited to have a not one, not two, but a three-time lounge visitor back, and that is Jeff Barnes. Thank you for taking the time to meet with us and share some more of your experiences and your insights.
I
Disney.
love.
Go ahead.
I'm always happy when you guys invite me, and I can't wait for the post sponsorship invite when the Zoom calls are not limited to 45. Because I like to talk.
We love it as well. We love it as well.
Disney has welcomed billions of guests from every corner of the world, different cultures, different languages, different generations, yet somehow people leave with many of the same feelings. They leave with joy, wonder, connection, and belonging. And that's not accidental. It's the result of intentional leadership, shared vision and culture that every cast member helps create every single day. And as educators, we have some of those same opportunities. We may not be creating a magical vacation, but we are creating experiences that students will hopefully carry with them for a lifetime. Every interaction, every routine, every celebration, every challenge is an opportunity to shape how our students feel about themselves and learning and their sense of belonging. And I think today I want us to explore what schools can learn from one of the world's most recognizable cultures, not because we want our schools to be necessarily become Disney, but because the principles behind Disney are things that I think we can all strive for in our classroom. So once again, Jeff, welcome. We're going to start with a lightning round question. We haven't done this before. We're going to just change it up a little bit. Jeff, Dwayne and I are going to take some turns. We're going to ask you some quick questions, and we just want your off the top of your head answer. All right? So first,
and even though we've cheated, we already know the questions. We're going to jump in and kind of offer our answers as well. So
first, Jeff, favorite Disney movie?
Dumbo.
Nice. Oliver and Company.
Okay. Meet the Robinsons, which goes along with the overall theme of keep moving forward. So the central theme of that movie.
There you go. Go ahead, Dwayne.
All right. Favorite Disney park attraction?
Space Mountain, Disneyland version.
I'm gonna do the Indiana Jones ride at Disneyland. Always my favorite.
I can see that.
All right. And I've only been to Disney World, so Captain EO. Big Michael Jackson fan.
There you go. There you go.
Did you see the movie, Michael?
I have not yet.
How can you say you're a big Michael Jackson fan and you haven't seen Michael?
It's on my list.
Okay.
Jeff, coffee or tea?
Coffee. I'm drinking it now.
I'm a coffee in the morning and sweet tea in the afternoon.
There you go.
Like it. I'm a tea person. Don't like the taste of coffee. Love the smell, but not the taste.
So, Dwayne, I was like that until 2014, and then after my first brain surgery, I woke up craving coffee, and I drink more in a day now than I had my entire life before that point. And they had warned me before the surgery that it could alter my taste buds, and it did.
That's crazy.
Wow. All right, Jeff, morning person or a night owl?
Morning, 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 morning.
I'm actually both. I could be up till like 11 o'clock, 11:30, and I'll be up again at 5:30, and I'm perfectly fine.
Nope.
I was the same way. I think it's like as I got older, that's what it was. I'm both night owl and early person. So
I'm up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and after 9 o'clock, nope, not happening.
But besides your own, what is your favorite leadership book?
Besides my own. Oh, I usually get asked what is my favorite Disney book. So my favorite leadership book. Um, I-
I'll let you stall a little bit. I'm going to jump in with mine. Essential 55, Ron Clark. I'm a huge Ron Clark fan.
okay.
So,
I wouldn't know if you call it a leadership book, but I like Be a Goldfish, Ted Lasso. It's just about,
Oh, that's a good one.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, I this is cheating a little bit. But I like the book How to Be Like Walt.
I can see that. Yep, yep.
we'll
It's
allow
the
it.
Yeah, it's the closest book that was in the market before I wrote mine. And
Now no one knows what that book is because you're dominated the market.
so the book was written by the general manager of the Orlando Magic. And I actually got a call invited to be on his afternoon radio show in Orlando, which at 5'7", 5'8" is the only time a general manager from an NBA team has ever called me.
That's funny.
All right. One leadership word that everyone should live by.
A vision.
Servant.
Hmm. Patience.
All good. All good.
Nice.
One thing principals should stop doing right now.
I'm going to let you two answer that because I'm going to have to think about it.
And principles, micromanaging.
Yeah.
So releasing,
Well,
like
every leader
trusting their
should
staff.
stop doing
Yeah.
that.
I would say taking unnecessary time. If we're going to use up someone's time, it needs to be valuable.
Yeah. I would say sending emails or any sort of communication during a period where they're not necessarily sensitive to what the teachers are facing that day or that week.
Hmm.
And like they're kind of living in their world and are acting completely unaware of the world on the front lines.
I like that. I like that.
All right. One thing that all teachers should hear before the school year starts.
Uh, we appreciate you.
I'm going to give you this time to work in your classroom.
Wow. But it's got to be true, though. You can't tell them that. Oh, just that I believe in you.
Best leadership advice you ever received.
Listen, um, just because you're the boss or just because you're the leader doesn't give you authority. And the authority comes from listening and being patient and figuring out what's going on before you say a word about how to do things or what needs to change.
Hmm.
I know for me, it'd probably be like, you know, when time gets tough, stick it out. And one year I went to one of my mentors, I was looking down the barrel of 28 fourth graders. That was what was going to be in my classroom. And he basically looked at me and he goes, dude, just shut up and show 'em what you can do.
Mhm.
And that's exactly what I did. So,
Yeah. Yeah, just always be present, do your best. So that's all that we can ask.
if Walt Disney walked into your school or a school right now, like you could picture in your brain, Jeff, what do you think he would notice first?
The lack of creativity, um, the cookie cutter approach, and the rush to standardization.
I actually watched a video today, and I think it was a TED Talk, but that's basically what it talked about. Is, and you talk to a 5-year-old and he's drawing a picture, and he's like, "What are you drawing a picture of?" He's like, "I'm drawing a picture of Jesus," and then he goes, "Well, no one's seen Jesus before," and he goes, "Well, they're about to." And then we kids aren't afraid to be wrong, but then sometime between being a kid and then being an adult, we lose that. We're afraid to be wrong. We don't want to try new things. We gotta. You're right there.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that
Well,
was a big message from our last Zoom to tie up our book study, was that just that encourage them to get up off the bench. Just that children would never have that fear. It was
mhm.
just at some stage we developed that where it hinders everything we do.
Yep. Absolutely.
If everyone was scared of failure, nothing new would ever be invented. That's the truth. You know. Um,
Well, we
that's a
would
good
never
trend.
we would never even learn how to walk.
Mhm.
Yep. Disney has become a global brand, Jeff. One of the things that you always talk about is how the sun never sets on Disney. You know, it, it transcends cultures and generations. And what do you believe they've Disney has figured out about people to make that happen?
The importance of connection and using that connection to um, change how people feel. And it's emotion that drives decision making. It's not knowledge, it's not information, it's not logic, it's not facts. It's emotion.
Hmm. And that's amazing how like that's everything in our lives. Like that, like as Jordan said, it transcends just the theme park, the the movies, the everything that we think of Disney, but that is real life. That is what we should aspire to be. So I'm going to ask you this question already knowing the answer, but is Disney's success really about just rides and characters, or is it about something a little bit deeper?
I mean, I would almost argue that it's successful regardless of rides and characters. Um, I mean, it's successful because of Walt's vision for creating a park that told stories and taking the risk to tell stories that tie into the emotions that we all feel and very much want to continue to feel. And more important than the rides and the characters are the cast members and empowering them to extend the emotion beyond the park and into the interaction with each and every guest.
It just Disney is such it's an experience. It's not about the ride. It's not, Universal's about the rides, right? Disney's more than that. It's a whole immersive experience, and it's something that it's amazing. Um, what leadership lessons from Disney apply just as much in a school setting as they would in a theme park?
Well, I, I go back to the word that I use when you ask me about leadership, and that is vision. You know, Walt had the vision for a place where parents and children could have fun together. He didn't have the vision for an amusement park because we had 2,000 of those across the country when Disneyland opened, and most of them were awful. And Walt didn't want anything to do with them. And his wife Lily said, "Why would you want an amusement park? They're filthy." And Walt's response was, "That's the point. Mine's going to be clean." Walt had a vision for something completely new, something completely different. And, what would it look like if our teachers, our schools, our districts, our principals, our superintendents, every single year had a vision? And I don't mean like a theme or a tagline, but a true vision for what they wanted um, the 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 year to look like by the end, right? Rather than checking boxes and hitting your scores. I mean, all of that stuff's important. I'm not trying to minimize that. But to really have the courage to lead in completely new and uncharted directions and see if you can go somewhere that's never been gone before.
You talk about, we shouldn't just the test scores and stuff are important, and I would argue that all these other things we're talking about, the story, the connection, the creativity, when you bring that stuff, that's where the scores come in. When you open up that door, that's how you also can increase the scores. And I think that's a great idea.
Mhm. And going on from that, so kind of launching off from that question, um, how would organizations, because not, I mean, and specifically to education, we talk about schools and districts. Every year we want to have a successful school year. So that's like a short-term goal, but how do we transcend that further to make it timeless? So similar to the way that Disney does, that it's not just something, a short-term goal or a small focus. How do we make a district or a school or an organization that timeless?
Well, I mean, I think you have to start with how are you defining success?
Mhm.
And is it a definition that is like truly compelling? And what I mean by that is like, is it genuinely going to move people? Are they going to feel it in a way that is like absolutely unforgettable? Um, I talk almost every day with students who were in the very first class that I ever taught 26 years ago. And I guarantee you, like, we are staying in communication, not because they remember a fact that I told them the third week of class, or they remember their score on a midterm examination and they're still like really, really proud of it. They remember the experience that I created in that class. And 26 years later, they're still wanting to connect with me because it connects them back to that experience.
And
And
I,
if
I
and
tell
if you
everyone,
think about the teachers that you still are connected with and that you still remember, I guarantee you it's not facts or
Mhm.
curriculum, it's how he or she made you feel.
you connect to people, not facts. And I tell everyone, life is so much about relationship and connection and your ability to form them and to form meaningful ones. You know, just like Disney World or Disneyland, it's not necessarily a entertainment business, it's a people business. And schools are a people business too. So let's talk a little bit about that. If Walt was going to design a school instead of a theme park, where do you think he would start?
Well, first of all, you're tapping into something that I have to be careful about because there is a book titled "If Disney Ran Your Hospital,"
Hmm.
and I very much want to write or help co-author a book titled "If Disney Ran Your School" and or "If Disney Ran Your University."
Nice.
Because
I
if
read
somebody's
that.
done that in the healthcare industry, tell me we couldn't do that in education, gentlemen, right?
Absolutely.
Right, exactly. So he's going to start he's going to start it out in the parking lot. How are parents and students feeling when they start this experience each and every day? Because for Walt, that's where the story begins. And he wants to immerse you into the story. And is that a story that like you're connecting with? Is that a story that you want more of? Or is this like a pain point and everybody is just trying, to endure and minimize? And then from there, he is going to want to make sure that there is lots of room for creativity and for freedom and for expression and for people to try new and different things. And Walt talked all the time about being an edutainer. And he got a lot of grief for that, especially for someone who never got past ninth grade in his own formal education, because he didn't have the credentials to tell anybody how to get an education. But Walt was very clear. I would rather entertain, knowing that people are going to learn something and might remember it, than educate, and God forbid they be bored and they not remember or retain any of it.
I tell teachers and gym teachers and everything says something and everything has a purpose, like when you interact and how you say and what your classroom reads. And I think that's right. The parking lot has the way they come into the building has a purpose. And I think that'd be a great place to start.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. We think of that in the elementary with the parent pickup line and the drop off. So, like on that first day of school, we have our teachers lined up out playing music, and it's that kind of thing that we should probably do more often, other than just the first day of school. Maybe not, it'd be overkill, I think, if we were out there doing it every single day, but probably doing that. But it's more the positive. It
But you
doesn't
can
have to be
surprise them and do them on days that they don't expect it,
right,
right?
right.
So it's interesting because I would work at the university setting, and the first day of class, and you have multiple first day of classes because students taking Monday, Wednesday, Friday courses are going to have different classes than students taking Tuesday, Thursday, right? So you've got to be out there multiple days on multiple fronts. And what was interesting is the vast majority of the folks who wanted to be out there helping would be out there for the 8 a.m., the 8:15, the 8:30 classes, which is great. But we had a ton of courses that started as early as 7 a.m. because we were short on classrooms and we had to maximize the day. And I had my team out there every single semester at 7 a.m. And my argument was, if you're not out there at 7 a.m. for every student and every class, then you're just showing up at 8, 8:15, and 8:30 for the show of it and not to actually be helpful.
Yeah. I will say one thing that I was able to teach a few courses at the university level as well. So teaching kindergarten to that, one thing that I thought was amazing is that they're not much different. We think of
Mm.
like high school kids, like they still have that same desire to want to be seen, to want to be heard, to so it's that was pretty amazing. So
Yeah. Once you realize that all of us, meaning adults, are really just large versions of 8-year-olds running around in the world, um, you start to see everything quite differently. And I think the advantage of elementary school teachers is you actually are dealing with 8-year-olds, right? So is everybody else. You know it, we don't.
yeah. Well, there's
I
no place to see that better than like at Disney World or at Disneyland, because the first time that I went was as an adult.
Mhm.
So, and I was living I was instantly transformed into an 8-year-old running around, eyes this big,
Yeah.
having the time of my life.
And so, as a principal or as an administrator, as a superintendent, what if you saw all of your teachers as 8-year-olds?
Hmm.
How would that transform the interaction and the supervision and the leadership? Be pretty powerful.
Yeah.
one thing I mean I talk about with people is like you have teachers that yell at a kid because they won't do what they're supposed. Do you when they get yelled at, like as an adult? How do you respond to that, right? Like you won't respond. They're not going to respond that way either. They're little humans just like you, and we gotta treat them that way. I will say though, as an RA, when I was in college, there is lots of the problems and behaviors that I dealt with as an RA are pretty similar to the behaviors and problems that I've dealt with as an elementary school teacher.
I
Things
don't
don't
doubt that.
change.
Yep.
You know, one of the things I think Disney is great at is culture. And you talked about cast members earlier. I mean, every single person buys in to that culture and into what they want. As how do leaders intentionally build that culture rather than simply hoping that it happens?
Well, first of all, you have to know what you want. And most people don't get what they want because they have no clue what they want. And so again, that's the vision piece. Do you as a leader have a vision for the culture that you want to create and you want your team to buy into? Then secondly, do you have the courage? And this is tough. Do you have the courage to hire based on your vision for culture? Not for credentials, not for aptitude, but for cultural fit. And when Walt was building Disneyland, he didn't want amusement park employees because he wasn't doing another amusement park. And Van Arsdale France, who was hired out of the aerospace industry in Texas, was tasked with putting together the training program that would ultimately become Disney University. They didn't have that together until less than 2 months before the park opened. And Walt's only edict was to hire happy people. That was it, because he was building the happiest place on earth. So if we're going to have the happiest place on earth, hire happy people. We can train the rest. I want happy people. And, how many of us, again, know what we want in terms of culture and then are willing to have the courage to hire exclusively based on cultural fit?
That's the hard one.
Yeah.
That hiring part. I have not gotten to sit in on a lot of the hiring at this point at an admin career. But I sat in on interviews and did that before, and it's, this person checks boxes
Mhm.
as far as they have teaching skills. They've been teaching for a long time, but you're right. They check the boxes of this is what I want for our building, and this is where I want to go, and can they help fulfill that?
Hmm. So, Jeff, and we've mentioned this a couple different times on the intentionality of everything that Walt Disney did when designing the park. So, what are small details that you think would have the biggest impact on making a memorable experience? Again, tying this back into educationally related with our schools, or what's some of those small details that you think would make the biggest impact?
Well, Walt was willing to test things out. He didn't assume that he already knew everything, because let's face it, he was getting into what was for him a brand new industry. And looking back on it, like because he wasn't doing another amusement park, he was getting into what was literally a brand new industry. And so, he would test things out, and then he would watch how the people responded, and he adjusted accordingly. And so, I think having the courage to do new and different things, and then fail.
Hmm.
And it's only a failure if you don't take the data and then adjust accordingly, right? And so, Walt thought he needed the sidewalk here and the plants and flowers there, but when people insisted on going a different way, he adjusted. And just constantly walking the park. And, we're all familiar with the whole idea of an undercover boss. Walt might have been the very first undercover boss
Huh.
because, and his executives were like, hey, we need admin offices. And he was like, no, you don't. I don't want you hiding out in the offices. I want you out in the park, seeing the park the way the guests see the park. And I can't help but wonder, Like, how many of us who are leading teachers aren't in the classrooms anymore?
That's funny. That is one of my goals, as I've talked about even in my interviews, is I want to still be in the, like, I want to teach lessons, not, and from a non-evaluative standpoint, because you got to stay grounded in what it's like to be a teacher if you're going to lead people, teachers. Something you said earlier, you hit on, like, we've standardized schools, and I think that is also one of the problems, is why we are afraid of failure, because everything rides on that test score. School funding, our jobs as teachers and as administrators ride on the outcome of a standardized test, and it makes for an environment where it is scary to try to fail, because failing means I might lose my job because they're going to hire somebody else to do it.
Mm. And that developing, because again, tying that back in with our students, like trying to get them to develop that growth mindset, that taking every failure as Walt Disney did and turn it into a positive, learn from that and grow from that. So, but no, that's, um,
But I think you have to ask yourself a question.
yeah.
Do you want to be a teacher who teaches the exact same way to the exact same test for the next 25 or 30 years? Or do you want to be a leader, an innovator, a visionary, and by definition, a risk taker? And the ceiling's a lot higher, and yeah, there's a floor involved in that. But I couldn't do the same thing for the next 25 or 30 years. Like, to me, that's the greater failure.
And that's probably why you have so much teacher burnout because they took that route.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, they're burned out because they're doing in year 15 what they were doing in year two. And our brains, yes, we want predictability, but we also want novelty.
Again, that's why I love teaching kindergarten because there's no year is exact. I've been doing this now. This will be my 24th year.
Oh,
So, and no year is the same.
yeah.
You know, Walt is a leader that he's remembered. People didn't just work for him. People remembered him. What separates leaders that people remember versus one they simply worked for?
That's a great question. And I have had the honor of interviewing often in front of like hundreds of Disney fans at various events and conventions. Disney legends, Imagineers, folks hired by Walt who worked alongside Walt, and they are passionate when they talk about him. And mentioning his death is almost like a taboo topic because it is still painful almost 60 years later. And the singular through line, regardless of who it is and what they did, is that Walt brought out in them gifts and talents and abilities that they themselves did not even know that they had. And in that regard, this is where I think Walt may well have been the world's best HR director because he hired well, he trained well, he cast the vision, he let his people go, and then he challenged them and he pushed them to do things that they had no clue they had the ability to do. But Walt saw it, and Walt had a way of motivating them and encouraging them and prodding them. It's very like how many of you, as teachers, see the potential in a student, and the student is like completely oblivious. So Pirates of the Caribbean is a really good example of that. The Imagineer Existentio was tasked by Walt to write the lyrics to the famous song Yo Ho Yo Ho, A Pirate's Life for Me. And Existentio's response is, I can't write a song. I've never written a song in my life. And Walt's response was, that's okay. It's time you learn.
That's incredible to know, like that he's the true visionary with the theme park, with the characters, but also seeing that within people as well.
Mm-hmm. And I
So,
can remember, gosh, my first year in education, I had a student who was in the military really complaining to me about my requirements in essays on exams. And his pushback was, I've been in the Army for almost 2 decades. They've taught me how to write in bullet form. And, this is not what I'm used to or what I'm accustomed to. And I simply responded with, if you've signed up for college and you're taking my class to simply do what you've always done, you're wasting both your time and your money.
I love that.
In other words, it's time you learn to do something new and something different.
I love that. We are running out of time. I want to make sure I get to this question, Jeff, but it's kind of we're gonna ask it and we'll let you go for as long as you want to go. Disney is remembered not because people can recall every detail of a trip, but it's how they feel. They remember the feeling of the fireworks and seeing the castle for the first time. 20, 30 years from now, what do you hope students remember about their experiences in our schools?
That they were challenged to push beyond their limits and believe more about themselves than they believed at the time or had been told by, friends, family, you name it.
They could achieve. I wrote my kids a song at the end of this year last year because it was my last year in the classroom, and I cried, they cried. It was a whole
Oh my
thing.
gosh, he shared it with me too, and like I had the tissues right next to me too.
That's one thing I talked about. Just I hope they knew that I could see the potential in them that they couldn't ever see in themselves, and that I always try to remember, the cure for cancer could be sitting in Dwayne's kindergarten class next year. And we can
Absolutely.
either work with that student to bring that out or take away that creativity and it won't happen anymore.
Yep. And we have to give them the courage to get up off their park bench when the idea comes for how they're going to cure cancer, build a Disneyland, change the world, whatever the case may be, right? Because we have 70,000 thoughts a day. The question is, what are we going to do with them, and do we have the courage to act? And if we can create an environment where we challenge our students to think and then have the courage to act outside of, current norms or current expectations, that's how the world gets changed.
And it 100% starts with us. We need to model that. We cannot be hypocrites and just expect that of our students. We need to be willing to fail. We need to be willing to get up off the park bench ourselves.
And we need to be talking about where we're doing that in our own lives, right?
Yep.
Get up off the park bench. That might be my new expression as an assistant principal. We gotta get up off the park bench, guys.
Yep.
Jeff, it is always an inspiration to hear
Oh,
you
thank
talk.
you.
I'm hoping we get to meet up in September when I go down to Disneyland and learn some more about the parks from you. So
Let's do it.
absolutely. Dwayne,
Jeff, Jordan, such pleasure being on here with you gentlemen. So all of our teacher friends out there, we're hoping that you have an amazing school year. But signing off from our classroom to yours, we see you, we get you, and we're right there with you. Keep changing the world, one child at a time.
From the plains to every town, we're building futures, breaking ground. Teachers rising, voices strong, leading change where we belong. It's about the hearts we raise, lighting up the